Welcome back to another lesson on Python. So this one we're going to talk about functions. So what is a function, how does it work, and so forth. So which is important. Think of it as a way to allow you to accomplish a lot more in a quicker manner. So let's start off with, kind of creating a new project. And if you have my class on Python, we will actually go over this on lecture day. So now this is a lab day, so I'm just going to discuss about the lab. So let's do, I'll call it my functions. Okay, create new project. It's not empty. Oh, okay. Apparently I already had a project called my functions. Alright, so let's create a new file. And we'll just call it function. I'll call it func1. Alright. So we'll talk about the basic aspect of what a function is and how to call it and so forth. So at this point we've just printed statements, test. At this point, we run this, it runs it, no big deal. It runs test down here. So what we're going to do this time is we're going to talk about how to define a message and how to call a message. So this right here, we can come down here to DEF. So DEF stands for define. All right, so DEF means define the name of your function. So in this case, I'm going to call it, let's say, basketball. You know what? Let's make it more specific than basketball. Let's call it bounce. And so we put the name of our function, and I called it bounce, and you do a colon. Under that, you need to write the statement of what your function is going to do. In this case, I'll say print something simple. I'll say the player bounced, can't spell, the ball 3 times. Okay. The other statement is I'll say the player had the ball stolen. Okay, so that is how I define my function. Then below it, I need to call my function. So in this case, I'll call it bounce. That's it. So what I do is I define it up here, and I can define it below here as well. If I run it, it shows right here. The player bounced the ball 3 times. Well, let's say I didn't call it. So let's hashtag this out. Let's clear this and let's run it and see what happens. Nothing happens because you're not defining that bounce. You're not defining that function name where it's going. So let's say that we wanted to cut this out and put it up here. Okay, so let's say we put the bounce up here and we run it. Is it going to work? No, it's not going to work because, so if you look here, if I highlight this and do more, it doesn't know what to do with it because you have to define your function before you can actually call it. So in this case, you have to define it above it, so then you can call it. Let's say if I wanted to call a function called step out. Well, it doesn't know where step out's at. And I can't come down here and do define step out. I could do it down here and just do test. It works fine, but I can't call it from here. So I have to call my function from here. Oops. And then it'll work. So now if I run it, it only runs that function because I'm not calling that function right there. So let's actually do something instead of this one. So let's exit out of here, right click on it, and create a new file, and we'll call it change py. Alright, so we'll actually do something more. So we'll call it define main. So we'll call it the main function main. We'll give it a, let's say vehicle, let's see, actually, let's do start equals, if I can spell equals. And we'll put 50. And then we'll say print the starting parameter is, and then we'll put a comma, the name, which is start 50. Okay. So now we want to create call a function. So right here I'm going to actually come down here for a second and create my function. I'm going to call another function called change, and I'm going to put an arg in here for argument. So we haven't talked about arguments. Arguments allows you to pass a value to this. So what we're going to do is pass this start value over here and pass a parameter. This is called a parameter or an argument, same thing. So in this case, we're going to print and say, I am changing the start time. The start output start value. And then we'll do arg for argument equals 0. And then we're going to print and say print now the new start value is, now I'll do comma arg. It's whatever value that we put in here. So what we're doing here with arg is we're declaring it, but we're also initializing it to be 0 until we pass something in. Okay? Because right now this is the start of it. So now let's come up here and we need to call that value. We need to do change. Oh geez. Change, and we need to pass in the start right here. So we pass that in. Now we print a statement and say back in the main the start is, and then we put value. So we're going to do this without doing something here real quick. So the last thing that we need to do is call the function. Oops. The main function. So we want to call it from here first. So let's just run this and play around with it first. So if I run it, this process is fine. It didn't do anything because we have two functions here. So let's say that we wanted to call the change function instead. And just do it like that and see what happens. See, it doesn't know what to do with it because we didn't pass a value with it. We're calling this, and let's say we put 5 in here. Will it work? Yeah, it'll work, but it doesn't work right. We said I'm changing the start value. Now the new value is 0. So something's wrong here. So let's actually call main and see what happens. So if we call, oh geez. If we call main, alright, so let's see what we did wrong here. Call the main argument. Run it. Print back in. Okay, starting value is 50. I'm changing the start value. Now the start value is, so let's comment this out. I guess we don't need this. That was dumb of me. Alright, so starting value is 50. I'm changing the value to oh, you're changing the value to 0. So, okay, hold on. So let's put 20. And that should pop it up there. Alright, so it says the starting value is 50. And I'm changing the start value. Now the new start is 20. So it grabs that argument. So it grabs the argument, but we're not actually passing it in. We're just defining two different mains. We're calling main right here. So let's say we hashtag this out and we ran it. It will just say that it's doing a traceback. So value is not defined. Oh, okay. I'm like, what is going on here? That should be start. Run it now. Alright, there we go. So the starting parameter is 50. Back in the main starts 50. So we hashtag this out. But now if we run it and we change it, let's see something here. I'll show you. It's just going to say, okay, the starting is 50. I'm changing the start value. Now the start value is 20. Back in the main, the start value is 50. So we're showing what we're changing the value. But let's say that we didn't change the value. Let's hashtag that out. And we just keep argument. And we run it. What happens is it passes the value 50 and it says, you know what, I'm going to use that value as this right here. But what we're doing here is we're changing the value to something else. So you see what I mean? We have to have this main feature right here that we're calling. We call this guy and we're doing one thing after another. So that is how that you would declare a function and pass the actual value within that function. So this is a good start of functions and why we need a function to do something. All right, well, thanks for listening to this first lesson on functions. We'll continue to another lesson. Thanks.